Welcome to Nonprofit Stories, inspiring tales from Silicon Valley. We will explore the transformative work of nonprofit organizations and leaders who are changing our community by tackling some of the most pressing issues facing Silicon Valley. So without further ado, let's dive into this exciting conversation. Today, we welcome Evelyn Keomian, the founder and executive director of the Carrot School Project. Their mission is to educate to help sustainably eradicate poverty and inequality, breaking the cycle of poverty for children and women through skills-based education and training programs. Thank you to our sponsor, TradeMyHome.com, for their community commitment and for making this podcast possible. Silicon Valley's wealth disparity is stark, with a top 10% earning $398,000 versus a bottom 20% at less than $35,000. Despite high median incomes, over 7,000 face homelessness, and educational divides are evident, as seen in reading levels between East Palo Alto and Palo Alto students. And now your host of Nonprofit Stories, Dee Kiso.
Welcome to the Nonprofit Story Podcast. I'm your host, Dee Kiso, and I'm so excited today to welcome Evelyn. Evelyn, welcome to the program today.
Thank you so much, Dee. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Evelyn Keomian, and I am the founder and executive director of the Carrot School Project, KSP for short.
Evelyn, tell us about the Carrot School Project.
Carrot School Project is an organization that has education as its core of its mission, and we use education as a means to help break the cycle of poverty. We work right here in the Bay Area in the Silicon Valley with families who live in RVs and families who are transient and are living in other transient situations by bringing them basic needs services. We have a wrapped-around service, and we also do work in Côte d'Ivoire, that's in West Africa, where we have a school campus where we rescue children and girls from labor, from trafficking, and we put them in education full-time. And we also have community programs for the mothers to help them reach independence and empowerment in a more sustainable way.
So, Evelyn, how does the KSP Project help Silicon Valley?
So in the Silicon Valley, we are playing a role in advocating for housing insecurity and housing equity. And we're doing this from the lens of education because our mission is educate to help break the cycle of poverty. And the reality is, even right now with the median income, if we don't have folks who are educated and trained to earn a decent living, we're not going to get rid of the homelessness issue that we're dealing with right now as a community and as a state. And so the way we do that here is we work with families who live in RVs and those who are transient and experiencing housing insecurity. We really focus on the children and the youth to make sure that the children are getting reading materials and math materials at home. We're providing them with books that will help them read at home with their parents. And we're also providing them with food cards, right? Because when these kids are not at school and getting warm lunches, the hunger at home, it's very, very present. And so we really focus on this group to be able to make sure that they are not hungry and that they are attending school districts where they are parked or near where they're living so that they can have access to that education. And we have a big focus also on the youth. We provide them with camps that takes them into nature for just mental health and also having a place to spend the day when they cannot attend camps and other things like that when school is closed. And so these are specific ways that we're serving our community here. We also do a lot of connection with the programs that already exist because we do, as a community, have gone a long way. We can talk a lot about the things that are missing in terms of how to help in the Bay Area, but we also have a lot of infrastructure and a lot of programs that are already designed and running, but there is a barrier to access to those that we really want to reach, right? And so the Carrot School Project as a grassroots can come in and connect our community members to these programs when we see the need and when they express a need for it, so that we can all serve them. But the ultimate goal, again, is education and moving them from the house living situation to an actual living situation that is decent and dignified.
What are the biggest challenges in operating an organization like this in Silicon Valley?
So the KSP Project operates locally and globally. And so locally, let's be honest, nobody wants the problem to be in their backyard. And when we are driving by RV dwellers or folks who are living in their cars and these trucks or cars are parked there for weeks and days, it's a sore sight for our eyes. And so oftentimes it hurts. And so they will try to shy away from it. They will try to not want to know really what's going on. And so everybody kind of have their conceived ideas of what an RV dweller is, or what an encampment dweller is, or the idea of why somebody might be experiencing homelessness. And so we are doing our best to educate the community to turn an eye to what we're seeing, because it's not a choice. Sometimes these are actual single mothers, families who are working multiple jobs and unable to make ends meet. And so that education for folks to understand that these are folks who see this place as a community. They call this place home, and that's why they're here. They're not here because they enjoy the living situation that they're in. If they had other choices, of course, they will pick it. So these are some of the things that could be a little challenging. And also this concept in philanthropy, right? It's an investment. And so oftentimes we want to see the number as scale. Whereas for us as a grassroots, we really want to focus on the high touch. We want to know that this child that we started serving on El Camino Real 2 years ago, who, when first had a conversation with Evelyn, was like, oh, college is not for people like us, right? Which is something you hear a lot from the youth. This child is now going to college, or he's in the Marine, or he's a foothill college, or whatever the scenario is. We really love that we can do that, and we can really trace from child A all the way to where he is now, and from youth B all the way to where he is now. And so translating that to an area that is predominantly data-driven, to see the value in having a high-touch, a low-number, quality-catered philanthropy model could be very challenging. And then obviously, as Americans, we're a bit challenged with our geography. So the Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire, is a French-speaking country that many people don't even know it's a country, right? And so it's a bit challenging to make them know about it and therefore care about it. But all these things are almost kind of fun challenges for me as a leader to have to take on wherever I'm invited, or if I find myself talking about what we're doing here locally or globally. I always keep these in mind as a challenge that I have to address on the get-go, so that people can either understand what is the demographic of the people that we're dealing with here locally, and what is happening overseas in West Africa.
So how many of these families are you helping right now? Are you their exclusive resource? And tell me, what is your follow-up plan to see the children's growth?
Yeah. So on any given year, we have anything between 35 and 58 families. And again, transient living situation, people move around between counties, which is something very tricky. And as they move from one county to another, they lose services that they were depending on. But for us as a grassroots, again, we can come in and follow them and just kind of keep track of them, whether they were in Redwood City and now they're in San Jose, or they were in Palo Alto and now they're in East Palo Alto, right? There's a proximity there, but there's a county line that is super clear when it comes to the funding. So we're able to follow them that way. And I really love building relationships. I have to say, in my role, what I want to do every day is be out there talking to youth and children and understanding how to be a better leader for them and with them, right? And so that is what drives me. But that's also what drives our ability to keep track. Like, we don't have a procedure to keep track of a family as they move. They reach out to us. Every time we do a distribution, which we do once a month, which is where we go around and we give them food cards, gas cards, book. Do you need more pencils? Do your children need more notebooks? The teenagers are often asking for connectivity devices, and that runs out of internet and stuff. And they will often reach out, or when we reach out, we're like, hey, we're distributing goods this month. Like, where are you? They will tell us where they are, and then we'll go and drive around and find them. And we have a relationship. I remember a few years ago, we did a community cleanup on El Camino Real, and they all came out. And oftentimes people go, wow, they're here, right? We've heard from school districts in the past, we've never been able to count how many children actually live in RVs in our community until the Care School Project started literally knocking at RVs. We had one of a solo mom said something on camera one time. I didn't know she said that, and then I watched it later, and it really brought tears to my eyes. But she said, Evelyn will knock at your RVs, and when she knows you're in there with a child, she will keep on knocking. And that is the key to building relationship and sustaining that relationship, is just truly just simply caring. It could be a bottle of water that we're bringing to them that day. It could be wipes. It could be diapers. And somebody could say, hey, your mission is education. Why are you doing that? Well, the child who's not well cared for when they're 3 are going to have a hard time learning how to read when they're in kindergarten and first grade, and they're definitely going to have a hard time in high school and college. So we want to get them very early.
Great work all around. So doing a project like this does take a lot of resources. How are you able to raise money to maintain the KSP program?
So the KSP is very new. We are in the culture of startup, so we continue to call ourselves a startup, and it takes each and every individual that is investing in this vision, in this high-touch, constant, I know the child that my funding is going to. We are really counting on them. And for us, we're in a consumer culture. When somebody puts a product out there, let's say a phone company, for example, puts a product out there, they're hoping, no, actually they're not hoping, they're working on creating a good product, and then they're depending on their customer to be a return customer because the product is good. And this is our plan for sustainability. We really want folks who are interested, I call them those who are not left-hand donors, right? It's not like, I'm signing you a check today and that's it. But we want folks who will be interested in seeing the journey of the Care School Project as an organization and of these youth and these children as a community member. One of the things that is really into my heart as a leader this year is placing our voice at the advocacy level, advocacy for education access, advocacy for ending homelessness for us as a community. But beyond putting my voice and our voice as an organization there, what I really am striving for is putting the voice of the youth. I want them to be able to speak for themselves. And so when I think sustainability, and I'm thinking, to the donors, new and old and young, I'm like, wouldn't it be fun for you to partner with the Care School Project today and make a contribution, being that you're coming to volunteer with us and give water, or, you're doing something? Wouldn't it be fun for that youth that opens the door when you knock at an RV and grab these goods from your hand? Wouldn't it be just powerful for you to see them speaking at City Council? What would that even be like when you see them run for a council position or a board position? And this is where I want us to go as a community, not just an organization or a group of people that are handing over what they don't need anymore or doing charity work, but those who are investing in a better community for tomorrow and are moving alongside with those who they're serving to see all of us at a table. Now, that is where I get excited.
You truly have an impact. Now, the KSP Project must really be making a difference in child trafficking and child labor. Can you speak to us a little bit about that?
let me try to be brief, and that's never going to happen, right? But when we're talking about child labor and child trafficking, we really are going to West Africa and to Cote d'Ivoire, and that is what we focus on there. We are taking children who are on the street, in cacao farms. I mean, so many people have heard, don't eat this chocolate bar because a child is working there. And I'm like, that is a good starting point for awareness, but it doesn't really do anything for the child. If anything, you're arming the child, because now the child is not going to do labor, but he's also not going to have money to eat. And you don't want that, right? And so what we're creating there is a space for not just the child to stop labor, but to receive education, for the mother to receive an education and a training that will help her earn a better income. And so when we sit as a team, and when I sit as a leader and start thinking about the programs that we're designing, both internationally and here, and especially for child trafficking, it's not just about stopping it, but it's to creating an avenue for these children to be a contributor to the society tomorrow. Because that's the issue that we have. We've never thought about as a community or as humans, like we never thought about helping for tomorrow. We want to help for today. And this is where education, it's so important for me that we're not just saving young girls from early marriages, but we are putting them into classrooms. They're excelling in their grades. They are serving their community, and they're striving to become leaders in this community. We have the story of Benedict, for example, right? We found her working on the market. She was being exploited by her aunt and her uncle. We got her in school, and she learned so quickly. She was with us in less than 4 years. She took the national exam. She moved to the next level. So this is a girl who's now 12. When we found her, she was 9. She was destined to get married to somebody who's extremely older. The family is taking the money. They had no way of paying it. It was just a messy situation. In December, we had an event, right? Guess who was one of the MCs of the event? It's 13-year-old Benedict. She can stand there and tell the other students what it means for her as a girl to receive education, what it means for her to come back to this community and talk to these folks that she once used to sell an item to, and look at them in the eyes and share her 13-year-old self and her wisdom. And that, to me, is how we end trafficking, because trafficking doesn't just end for Benedict at this time. It didn't just end the day we rescue her from that situation, but now she's talking to hundreds of other young girls and teaching them how to speak up for themselves, helping them identify that some of the things that are happening to them are wrong, right? Those cultural barriers, that she have lived through it. And she is also looking at how she can do this, how she can stay in school so she can help more people. And that, to me, is the path to not just stopping it right now, but stopping it in a sustainable way, which is to raise the next generation to know their value and help right where they are.
A typical problem homeowners have when wanting to buy a new home is whether to sell first or buy first. Either way is risky. When ready to look for a new home, TradeMyHome.com, powered by Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, offers an upfront guaranteed cash offer on your current home. Are you moving in the next 3 to 6 months? Text PAIR to 408-740-7400 for a free and no-obligation professional equity appraisal report, exclusively for Nonprofit Stories podcast viewers. For more information, visit TradeMyHome.com or call 408-740-7400. Remember, at TradeMyHome.com, your home is sold guaranteed or we'll buy it.
This program educates girls and women.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if you're seeing a little pushback with men
Yes.
Regarding this new thinking.
Yes, exactly, right? Of course, in the beginning, there was pushbacks, right? Like when we first opened the doors, right? Like I'm thinking back in 2018 with my big dreams of opening a free school that would be filled with girls on day one, and it wasn't. We had 17 students, our first cohort, and it was more girls than it was it was more boys than it was girls. And I really had to think through how to build allyship and how to build programs that are wrapped around that serves the community, right? And so we built allyship. Like we had tons of pictures of me sitting there with all councils of man. And it's just, little old Evelyn and then my director of affairs, and they're just all talking. But what we spend the time doing then was to build allyship with them, to make them understand, because fear will do things to people. Fear will, and I went through that as a child, right? It's like a girl shouldn't go to school because now she's going to know her rights and she's not going to follow the tradition, right? And so making them feel secure. And I always use myself as an example, both from how I'm approaching tradition. I am very cognizant. Oh my God, we do our research. We see how we can greet the elderlies in every single community that we go into. And so they're seeing me come in not as I know everything, but I'm a daughter of the land and I'm here to listen. And that has gone us very far. It helped us buy allyship. And another practical way we do this is also to include the man, right? So when we are looking at a program that we designed to get girls into school and educate their mothers, we're renting land and we're teaching women land ownership and agriculture and sustainability and food production for their community. Well, we need this land to be cleaned up. Who's getting hired for this is the man in the community. And so now they too have an income. They too have a buy-in in everything that is happening. And they're asking us, like, when can we get this program in our area? When can we expand this program? So we've built allyship that now has made them advocate for us into what we do versus it's not a them versus us thing. It's all of us together that are going to make these communities a better place to live, both here in the Silicon Valley as well as in Côte d'Ivoire and in everywhere else we are. And so it is important that we converse and we create space at the table for all the voices. That's what I didn't have as a girl growing up in abject poverty. Culture went against everything that I was and I wanted to be. And so today, as a leader, I often think about that. I was not invited at the table. How can I make sure that every voice is included at the table? And that includes sometimes the ones that I fear or the ones that I don't want to hear from.
So with that determination, how have you been able to incorporate the tech community in Silicon Valley to help with the KSP project?
So the leveraging of the tech community, it's slow in coming, but the leveraging of the tech is being very advanced, especially with what we're doing in Côte d'Ivoire, right? I opened up the school and I brought this brand new, at least to them, philosophy of teaching, which really, because we're taking children who have a traumatic past. And so the social emotional part of the space that we've created was very important. Yet our teachers have never been trained in how to run a classroom in a garden, right? Because we're a French colony. And if you've ever been to French school, it's one way of doing, right? And so we needed training. And so from day one, we had to, teachers have to learn how to get on the internet, how to do a video call with me. And if they had situations, you pick up a child who is been running on the freeway. And if you've ever been in a third world country, you know the kind of freeways I'm talking about. There are cars going, right? This kid has skills. And what you don't want to do is to kill that just in the name of education, right? You go into families and you go into regions that have spiritual beliefs, they have cultural beliefs, and you want to acknowledge that. You want to tap into the value of who they are. And my teachers were not trained into that. My team was not trained. And so a lot of it meant they have to record things, they have to dial me into a lot of things. And so we leveraged technology from day one, right? In fact, I think it was towards the end of last year, I wrote an article about how we've been using Facebook now, Meta. They have a portal that we have in our classrooms, and I can dial in or our donors can literally dial in and watch what's going on in the classroom. And so I wrote an article on how that had helped me as a leader, like train our teachers, really be able to develop, specific response to child trauma based on the children. And so we've had a lot of ways like that we have leveraged technology. We're right now doing English classes with one of our partners, which is on screen for 15 minutes and then moves on into a lot of back and forth between the kids. So these have been ways that we've leveraged it, right? And then here in the peninsula, one of the ways we learned that kids who are living in RVs were not allowed to register in school districts down the street right where they were parked was because I asked the question, are you all going to school on Zoom? Which was a thing back then. There was sort of virtual education happening, right? Because we launched this project early in 2020 with the pandemic. And the answer across the board was, school on what? And so we needed to leverage that technology and find ways to bridge the gap and bring access to them. And so we have been doing a lot of things like that with technology, but we're working on creating relationships with the companies who are behind these technologies so that we can all bring our hands together, whether we're serving locally or globally, we can all work together.
So if I recall correctly, a couple of years ago, a big storm removed the roof from the school in the Ivory Coast. We gathered tech and community people together, and in an hour we were able to raise more than enough money to replace that roof. Tell me more about this.
It's such a beautiful moment. It was one of the most painful moments for me because every time the school is closed in Côte d'Ivoire, we run the risk of losing the girls that we've worked at rescuing from a situation, right? And so it really will keep me up at night. Like, there's fear that sets in. But to put the word out there, and half of the folks in that room, I did not know them personally. I wish I knew that many people, but it is the people here. And so when folks ask me sometimes, like, is this specific company contributing to you? My answer will be, well, I don't know the company, but I do know people in the company who are stepping up and are making this their personal philanthropical legacy. It's very moving and it's tangible, right? And so that's the hard part of philanthropy. We're so used to the grandiose numbers of data that don't really mean anything. And then when you get people in a room and you can tell them about a person, about a child that really have their livelihood on the line when there's no school and when they can come into a safe space, that right there, that's what we saw on that day. People were moved by that. And they've seen videos of this. They saw pictures of these kids, which was also very interesting because for us, since day one, what I've always wanted to do was to show pictures of happy kids, right? This thing of serving with dignity, it's big for me. Because remember, I was the recipient of somebody's philanthropy. Whether I was in West Africa or I was here in the peninsula, I was recipient of services. And I vividly remember how I felt. And so one thing is to have the service, and another thing is to make the person receiving the service feel a certain way. And so we really strive, either it is here in the Bay Area or is in Côte d'Ivoire, to make sure that we're serving communities with dignity. And so we've never shown pictures of sad children. And it shocked me. I was like, we're showing these kids, but they were sad. That was the reality of the moment. And people were able to see that. And so we don't want to stay in that frame, in that mindset for a long time. But when it is true and when it is relevant, and for me as a leader, it was a big step to take to show what these kids were going through right then and there.
Thanks for trusting it. But I have never before seen so many people come together that once the money was raised in that hour, we gathered together, we joined hands, we danced, we sang, we listened to music and heard drums. Can you explain what was happening in this moment?
So when you're in Côte d'Ivoire, you're in West Africa, okay? And in West Africa, they have we have such a beautiful culture, and drumming is at the heart of it. And drumming was actually, it's a code in itself, and it's a communication tool in itself. And there are rhythms of drumming that can express sadness as well as express joy. And so it was so profound to see a group of people who have never heard the specific rhythm of drumming, right? But it resonated, like they knew that this was joy. And people were just dancing. And we have clips and videos of people trying to sing songs that they don't really know. But it was just, it was wonderful. And that is the heart of humanity. Right now, in the world, things are hard. Like, let's just be blunt about it. The world is a hard place right now. But the core of who we are as humans is that we can come together and speak the same language, whether we're hurting or we're in joy. And that is what we saw that day. There was a lot of joy with the drumming, and we danced it. And people were very, very happy to give. And I think they were even more happier to see the kids be back in the classroom. And that is one thing that, we've been able to do at the KSP Project, right? It's showing people where your investment is going. We're not just telling you to, I don't even know what it is that we can be telling you, but what it is that we're telling you, if we said, hey, let's rescue girls together, you get to see these girls, you get to kind of walk their journey with them. If we're telling you, this helps a mother and a girl, you are getting to see this family go from point A to point B. And when we bring it to the peninsula and we tell you about families who are living in their cars and living in the RVs by the side of our streets, well, we can also tell you about families that we found in that situation back in 2020 who are now in house or who are housed right now. We can tell you about youths who are now in college.
Evelyn, is there one success story that rises to the top that you could share with us right now?
Can I do two?
We'll let you do two.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so a very beautiful success story. I'm going to go back to Benedict's story because I already introduced her a little earlier. When she took that exam, like I remember going, all right, we're going to present her for this exam. Students usually study for 6 years to be able to take this exam. And after 4, I say, you know what? This girl has grit. She's gone through a lot. I am confident she can do it. Yet we didn't know because the KSP Project school in Côte d'Ivoire is at an elementary level. And so we have programs for boys and girls and for mothers, both mothers at the school and mothers in the community at large. But we didn't know where she was going to go next, which is middle school and high school. But the beautiful thing happened when we signed her up for the government to find a school for her, and somebody else stepped up in the community where she was assigned. And so today we can join our hands, and we're still paying for her education, her uniforms, and everything in between. And this wonderful woman, she's staying there. She's safe. She's loved. She gets to go to school when we need her to come back, or when she wants to come back, she can come back. And so that right there is a child that was selling chocolates and water by the side of the street and has gone through the KSP Project and now has landed in another community member's hands, and she's continuing her education. And that is what we want to do for each and every child that does not have access to education. That is what we want to do for all these girls. Rather than being married at age 9, we want them in the classroom. We don't want to lose out as a country, as a continent, the continent of Africa. We don't want to lose out on the potential to educate girls because they are our doctors of tomorrow. They are our climate advocates for tomorrow. They are our girls' advocates for tomorrow. And we want to invest in that, okay? When we come to the peninsula, oh my God, okay, I have to pick one good story. There are so many good stories, but one of my biggest things that I learned, which I didn't know, was the presence of actual gangs in our community. I'm gonna be transparent. I didn't know that. And kids who are experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity, they are the target. They are the easy target because they're falling behind in school. They're skipping school, and so they're out there. And we had we've done a camp one time and we took a picture and there were signs made in the picture and I didn't know this. And one of our partners pointed it out to us, like, oh, do you guys know what this sign means that the youths are making? And I was like, nope, I don't know. And so they kind of brought that to my attention. And I remember thinking, wow. And the next month we went for distribution. This is where we get out in the community. Right now it's the rainy season, so we're giving out tarps, we're giving out food cards, gas cards, more gas cards than usual because it's cold and they need to keep the heat in the RVs. And so we're doing a distribution, right? And I remember pulling two young girls on the side because I knew the boys would just kind of, be boys about it. And I was like, hey, girls, I just wonder, have you guys, have you heard about, such and such? And they're like, oh, yeah, they drive around every night. And then sometimes they knock at our RVs and they try to help us and stuff like that. And I showed them the pictures. I'm like, oh, and they were like, yeah, they teach us how to do this thing. And then one of the young girl, she said, but now we tell them we don't need their help anymore because the care school is helping us. And that right there, I went from hopelessness and despair to what we're doing makes a difference. If this 13-year-old can tell somebody in the middle of the night, I don't need you to come and recruit me for anything unworthy more than school because I can count on the Care School Project to do that, that to me makes me go, all right, what we're doing makes a difference and we should continue to do that.
Why is it essential to have a global perspective in addressing poverty?
Because nothing happens there. It happens everywhere. What is happening in Africa, the crisis of refugee in Europe affects us right here in the United States. The crisis of global warming and climate change. So what is happening in India is affecting us right here in the Silicon Valley. And so when we are helping, it is very important that we help locally, but that we take a global approach. Because if we don't, what we're doing, like the help that we need here is never going to end because what's happening globally is at our front door and it's going to find us. And so it's very important for folks to give right here to do something locally, but we have to keep a global perspective. It's like a big house. We all live in it together. If we don't help the leak in the kitchen, it's going to make it to the bathroom very soon.
How can individuals and organizations right here in Silicon Valley help you and the KSP Project?
We want to start with organizations. We are grassroots, very just slim budget, slim fundraising, slim team. We do not want to reinvent the wheel. If you check our website, if you look at what we do and that you have a service that you're offering that our youth can take advantage of it, please reach out so that we can build an ecosystem of nonprofit in the Silicon Valley that is going beyond the borders of counties and working together. Okay, this is how we are going to really have an exponential impact. And now for the individuals, we have so many ways you can volunteer virtually. You can come with us on the ground. We have some opportunities where we're going out. In summer, we have more opportunities than in winters, but we do have opportunities where you can literally get to give running water, like a clean water bottle, to somebody living in their cars. It is life-changing. I have seen it. Think about it. If somebody lives in a broken-down RVs, they don't have access to clean water, and you can volunteer to make that happen, all right? And then if you don't want to get on your feet, and donation is what you can do too, that's always welcome. We are a 501c3, and so as much as the IRS allows it, your donations are going to be tax deductible. And if you have organizations and companies that you want to connect us with to start the conversation, we are all about building relationships for long term.
Thank you, Evelyn, for the work you do and the joy you bring to our community. Thank you so much for sharing today.
It's always a pleasure to be able to share the Care School Project's mission with the community and those who have been with us for a while and those who are just getting to hear about us. And so I'm very grateful for the platform to be able to do so.
Here's a sneak peek of the next episode of Nonprofit Stories, featuring Deanna Persay, co-founder and executive director of the College of Adaptive Arts.
College of Adaptive Arts,
is a lifelong learning community and institution for adults of all abilities who historically haven't had access to college education.
Their mission is to provide an equitable, lifelong collegiate experience to adults with disabilities who historically have not had access to a college education.
In the Midwest in rural Indiana, and I got to go off to college after high school. And
check out our next full episode on Wednesday at 5 o'clock Pacific and 8 o'clock Eastern on YouTube and Apple Podcast. Thank you for listening to the podcast and acknowledging the impactful work of nonprofits in Silicon Valley. Please subscribe and share this episode with a friend. Thank you to our sponsor, TradeMyHome.com, for their community commitment and for making this podcast possible. Until next time, remember to support local nonprofits.